Have you ever stopped to wonder why you always feel responsible for carrying the pain of everyone around you? Why are you the one who steps in when things fall apart? The one who listens when no one else has the patience? The one who holds others together even when inside you're falling apart yourself? Here's a truth that might sting. You became an adult who saves everyone. Because no one ever saved you. Picture this. A child learning to wipe their own tears because there was no comforting hand to do it for them. A child who learned to stay quiet, to be strong, to keep it all together, because if they didn't, no one else would. That child grew up. And now that child is you. On the outside, you are the strong one, the reliable one, the one everyone calls when their world collapses. But inside, you carry the silent weight of someone who never got to be rescued. This is not a coincidence. It is not just your personality. It is the scar of neglect, of absence, of emotional wounds that were never tended to. Somewhere deep inside, your nervous system still believes that your worth lies in being useful to others, in proving that you can hold the weight no one else could carry for you. And so, you became the savior. But here's the brutal question. While you're saving everyone else, who is saving you? You see, the world applauds the strong, the dependable, the unshakable. But nobody sees the child inside, the one who still longs for what was never given. Safety, care, unconditional love. That's why even after helping others, you still feel empty. That's why no matter how much you give, it never feels like enough. Because the person you've been trying to save all along is you. And until you face that truth, you will keep rescuing others as a way of avoiding your own wound. But wounds ignored do not disappear, they grow. So let me ask you again, why do you always feel responsible for fixing everyone else's pain when no one was ever there to fix yours? Before we dive deeper, let me ask you for a small favor. If this message is already striking a chord with you, take a second to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. That way, you will be the first to know when I share the next video filled with insights and truths that might just change the way you see yourself and the world around you. You know this pattern because it has become the rhythm of your life. You are the one who shows up when people need something. The one who listens at 2 a.m. when a friend is falling apart. The one who covers shifts at work, volunteers for the extra responsibility, says, "I'll take care of it," before anyone else even speaks. You are the glue that keeps families together, the mediator who softens conflict, the reliable shoulder everyone leans on. And let's be honest, you've gotten very good at it. People trust you. They admire your strength, your maturity, and your composure under pressure. They say things like, "I don't know what I'd do without you." From the outside, it looks like you have it all together, like you were born to be the caretaker, the fixer, the strong one. But here's the part no one sees. When the calls are over, when the favors are done, when everyone else goes back to their lives, what's left for you? Exhaustion, silence, a deep sense of invisibility. You give and give and give, but when it's your turn to collapse, who is there to catch you? Maybe you've noticed it in small ways. After being the peacemaker in a family argument, you go home and cry in secret. After pulling a friend out of crisis, you sit in your car, gripping the steering wheel, wondering why you feel so empty. Maybe you've even started to resent the very people you help, but then guilt takes over and you silence that feeling too. Because in your mind, you can't stop. If you don't hold everything together, who will? This cycle didn't appear out of nowhere. It was taught, maybe not with words, but with experiences. In American culture, we praise independence to the point of cruelty. From the time you were young, you heard the messages. Be strong. Don't be a burden. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Our society glorifies the self-made individual, the hero who asks for nothing, the one who survives without help. And if you needed comfort, if you wanted to be held, if you longed for someone to tell you it was okay to be weak for a moment, chances are you learned to swallow it down. You may have grown up in a house where emotions were inconvenient, where sadness was dismissed with, "You'll be fine," where anger was punished, where vulnerability was ridiculed, where the unspoken rule was simple: don't bother anyone with your pain. Maybe your parents were too overwhelmed to notice your tears, or maybe they were emotionally unavailable, lost in their own battles. Either way, the result was the same: you learned to parent yourself. So what happens when that child grows up? They carry that training into adulthood. They build an identity around being the strong one, the rescuer, the savior. It becomes second nature to anticipate the needs of others before your own, to scan a room and sense who's upset, to step in and fix problems that were never yours to fix. On the outside, this looks noble. On the inside, it's exhausting. And here's the cruel twist: because you learn to silence your needs, most people around you assume you don't have any. They don't check on you. They don't ask if you're okay. They don't think to carry your weight because you carry theirs so well. Over time, this invisibility becomes its own prison. You are surrounded by people, yet profoundly alone. This is the hidden wound of the caretaker. The wound of the child who grew up believing that love had to be earned through usefulness, that worth was measured in sacrifice, that strength meant never breaking. And in America, this wound is everywhere. We live in a culture that celebrates resilience, but shames vulnerability. We idolize the ones who never give up, but we forget that many of those heroes are collapsing quietly when no one is watching. So if you've ever wondered why you feel so tired, so unseen, so disconnected, even though everyone calls you strong, this is why. Because your role as the savior was never a choice, it was a survival strategy. It was the only way you knew to secure some sense of belonging in a world that told you not to need anything at all. And while this role may have protected you once, today it has become your cage. Carl Jung, one of the greatest explorers of the human psyche, gave us tools to understand exactly why so many adults live trapped in the role of the rescuer. And if you've recognized yourself in the story so far, his framework may feel like someone finally turned on the light in a dark room you've been wandering through your entire life. Let's begin with the persona. Jung described the persona as the mask we wear to interact with society, the image we project so that we'll be accepted. For some, that mask is the cheerful one, always smiling no matter what. For others, it's the professional one, always competent, always composed. In your case, it may be the strong and reliable one, the adult who saves everyone else. This persona becomes a shield. It allows you to survive in a world that once made you believe you couldn't afford to be weak. But here's the tragedy. The more you identify with this mask, the further you drift from who you truly are. You begin to believe that you are only valuable when you are useful. You forget that beneath the mask there's still a child, lonely, unseen, longing for care. And while the persona may win you admiration, it cannot give you fulfillment. It can make you look strong, but it will never heal the wound underneath. This is where the shadow enters. Jung taught that the shadow is the part of ourselves we push into the unconscious, the fears, desires, and wounds we don't want to admit. For the savior personality, the shadow often carries the terror of abandonment, the deep conviction that you are not enough, not lovable unless you're giving. You've buried these fears so deeply that you might not even be aware of them, but they still rule you. Every time you rush to solve someone else's problem, every time you sacrifice your needs for theirs, you are unconsciously trying to silence that shadow voice that whispers, if you don't give, you will be left behind. The cruel irony is that by denying your shadow, you only give it more power. Jung warned that what we do not bring into consciousness returns as fate. That means the more you ignore this hidden wound, the more you will repeat the same patterns, relationships where you give everything and receive nothing, friendships where you are always the listener but never the one heard, a life full of service but empty of true connection. And at the root of all of this lies what Jung called a complex, a cluster of unresolved experiences and emotions, usually formed in childhood. In this case, it's often the mother complex or the father complex. If your parents were absent, unavailable, or inconsistent, your inner child learned something painful. I cannot rely on anyone to save me. This became the seed of your adult savior role. Unconsciously, you took on the responsibility to protect yourself and later, to protect everyone else, as a way of coping with that abandonment. Think about it. If no one came when you cried, you learned to stop crying. If no one noticed when you were hurting, you learned to bury the hurt and take care of others instead. This wasn't a just survival, it was a desperate attempt to earn the love and security that never came. And now, decades later, the complex is still running the show. Without realizing it, you are trying to rewrite your childhood by saving everyone else. You're hoping that if you give enough, care enough, sacrifice enough, someone will finally do for you what was never done before. But Jung would tell you this: no one else can do it. Not fully, not in the way you long for. Because the only person who can rescue the abandoned child inside of you is you. This is why Jung's work is not about destroying the persona or erasing the shadow. It is about integration. The persona is useful, you need it to function in society. The shadow is necessary, it holds the key to your wholeness. And even the complex, painful as it is, points the way toward healing. But integration requires courage. It demands that you stop hiding behind the mask, that you face the shadow without fear, and that you acknowledge the complex without letting it control you. Only then can you step out of the endless role of savior and begin to live as a whole human being, someone who can give without losing themselves, someone who can receive love without feeling unworthy, someone who no longer saves others to avoid saving themselves. It's one thing to talk about theory. It is another to see how this savior pattern plays out in real lives you may recognize all too well. Take the nurse, for example. She spends 12-hour shifts running from room to room, holding patients' hands, adjusting medications, and offering comfort to families who are breaking down in grief. Her entire career is built on saving others. She is admired, respected, and praised as an angel in scrubs. Yet when she goes home, there is no one there to hold her. She collapses on the couch, numb, sometimes too drained even to eat. She cries quietly in the shower so no one can hear. The world calls her a hero, but inside she feels hollow, invisible. Over time, the weight of unprocessed pain turns into exhaustion, burnout, and eventually depression. But because her persona is the strong one, she tells no one. She shows up to work with a smile, even as her own spirit fades. Or think about the therapist. Day after day, they sit across from people in deep pain, listening, guiding, absorbing stories of trauma, betrayal, heartbreak. They help others process grief, but who helps them? They give so much of their energy, their empathy, their very soul, that when the session ends and the door closes, they feel like an empty shell. Many therapists admit to struggling with depression and anxiety themselves, but they feel they must hide it, because aren't they supposed to have it all figured out? The irony is brutal. The healer who cannot heal themselves, because their entire identity depends on being the rescuer. And then there's the social worker. Driven by compassion, they enter the most difficult environments, families in crisis, children in danger, communities torn apart by poverty or violence. They fight for justice, for safety, for change. But they are chronically underpaid, overworked, and emotionally drained. They often leave the office with the faces of children haunting them, carrying burdens that were never theirs to carry. Many turn to alcohol, to late-night distractions, to anything that will quiet the weight of their own shadow. Their lives become a cycle of saving others while silently drowning themselves. But this isn't just about professions. It's about ordinary friendships, maybe even yours. We all know that one friend who is always the shoulder to cry on. They are the ones everyone calls when the relationship ends, when the job is lost, when the anxiety feels unbearable. They listen patiently, offer advice, and drive across town in the middle of the night just to sit with someone in silence. They rarely say no. They rarely ask for anything in return, and everyone loves them for it. But when that same friend finally breaks, when the exhaustion and loneliness catch up, who is there for them? Too often, no one. Because they've trained everyone around them to see them only as the strong one, the helper, the rescuer. Their pain shocks people. "I had no idea you were struggling," friends say, because they never thought to ask. The savior has become so good at hiding their own wounds that when they finally show them, people don't know how to respond. And so the cycle continues. They retreat, put the mask back on, and keep saving others to avoid the unbearable feeling of being unseen. These stories may sound extreme, but they are everywhere. Nurses, doctors, therapists, social workers, teachers, friends, siblings, the list goes on. The details may change, but the pattern is the same. Outward strength, inner emptiness. Outward care, inward neglect. The persona of the savior, driven by the shadow of abandonment, fueled by the complex of a child who was never saved. And if you see yourself in these stories, don't be surprised. That's the point. This isn't just about them, it's about you. It is about the way you've carried others for so long that you forgot what it feels like to be carried yourself. Carl Jung once wrote, "What you do not bring to consciousness appears in your life as fate." Few quotes capture the tragedy of the savior pattern more perfectly. When you spend your life unconsciously driven by the wound of abandonment, you don't see it for what it is. You call it duty. You call it love. You call it responsibility. But really, it is fate repeated over and over until you dare to face it. This is why so many people wake up in their 40s or 50s, exhausted and bitter, realizing they've spent decades pouring themselves into others with nothing left for themselves. They thought they were choosing to be the caretaker, the reliable one, the savior. In reality, the unconscious was choosing for them. Jung's warning is not just poetic, it is practical. If you do not confront your shadow, if you do not see the abandoned child within you, that wound will dictate your relationships, your career, your very identity. You will call it loyalty, but it is compulsion. You will call it strength, but it is avoidance. And you will call it fate when in truth, it is unhealed trauma. Friedrich Nietzsche, another giant of existential thought, offered a different but complementary perspective. He said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." At first, this sounds empowering. Find your purpose, and you can survive anything. But here is the danger. What if your why is not truly yours? What if your why is simply rescuing others, fixing others, saving others, while you ignore yourself? That is not a strength. That is self-destruction disguised as meaning. Many modern caretakers have unconsciously adopted this false why. They believe their value comes only from giving, from healing, from holding others together. And yes, it sustains them for a while. It even gives them moments of fulfillment. But because it is not rooted in self-love, it eventually collapses. Nietzsche's insight reminds us that purpose can keep us alive, but it must be authentic. A borrowed why, built on trauma, will ultimately consume you. And then there is Alice Miller, the Swiss psychologist who exposed one of the most painful truths about childhood in her classic book, The Drama of the Gifted Child. Miller wrote about children who from an early age learn to sense the emotional needs of their parents and caretakers. These children become gifted in reading moods, anticipating conflicts, and stepping in as little caregivers. They learn that their survival and their chance at being loved depends on meeting the needs of others. But the cost is devastating. These children suppress their own needs. They silence their anger, their sadness, their desire for comfort. They become experts at pleasing, at fixing, at rescuing long before their nervous system is ready for that burden. And what happens when these children grow up? They become adults who cannot stop rescuing. Adults who think their only value lies in being useful. Adults who struggle to even identify what they need because they lost touch with that voice decades ago. Miller's insight shines a harsh but necessary light on the roots of the savior role. You did not choose this identity. It was chosen for you by circumstances beyond your control. You were forced into adulthood long before your childhood was complete. And while society may applaud your resilience, the truth is that your gift came at the price of your own soul. When you put Jung, Nietzsche, and Miller together, the picture becomes clear. Jung tells us that if we don't face the unconscious, we will repeat it endlessly as fate. Nietzsche reminds us that meaning is essential, but it must be authentic, not a mask for our wounds. And Miller shows us how early those wounds are carved, how childhood scripts can become lifelong prisons. The message is both sobering and liberating. Sobering because it means your savior role is not just a choice, it is a compulsion rooted deep in your psyche. Liberating because once you see it, you can begin to change it. You can stop calling it destiny and start calling it what it really is. The cry of the child you once were, still waiting for someone to finally notice. And maybe, for the first time, that someone can be you. If you've carried the role of savior for most of your life, the first step toward healing may feel impossible. Admitting that you've done to save everyone. For someone whose entire identity has been built on rescuing others, this feels like betrayal, like abandoning your purpose. But here's the truth. You are not betraying others when you stop overfunctioning. You are rescuing yourself. And that is where real healing begins. Carl Jung often emphasized that individuation, the journey of becoming whole, requires us to face the parts of ourselves we ignored. For the lifelong rescuer, this means turning back toward the child you once were, the one who never got saved. That child is still inside you, hidden beneath the persona of strength and the shadow of abandonment. They have needs you've silenced for years, the need to be comforted, to be cared for, to be loved without having to earn it. So the question is, will you finally stop running from that child? Will you sit with them, listen to them, and offer them what no one else ever did? Healing begins the moment you stop seeking salvation outside, through fixing others, and start giving it inward. When you hear your own needs and honor them, you are not being selfish. You are reparenting the part of you that was left behind. One practical step is learning to set boundaries. Boundaries are not walls to shut people out. They are the lines that protect your energy and ensure that your giving comes from authenticity, not compulsion. It means saying no when you are depleted, even if you fear disappointing someone. It means recognizing that your worth is not tied to how much you sacrifice. And it means trusting that the people who truly value you will stay, even when you stop overextending yourself. Equally important is giving yourself permission to be weak. This may sound terrifying. For years, you've survived by being strong, dependable, unshakable. But strength without vulnerability is a mask, not authenticity. Allowing yourself to cry, to ask for help, to admit when you are overwhelmed is not weakness, it is courage. Because it is only in vulnerability that true intimacy is possible. You cannot be deeply loved while hiding behind invincibility. And then there's the work of building relationships that nourish you. Many saviors surround themselves with people who take, because that dynamic feels familiar. But healing requires choosing differently. Seek out the friendships, partners, and communities where reciprocity exists, where you are not only the listener, but also the one listened to. Not only the caretaker, but also the one cared for. It may mean letting go of relationships that thrive on your self-abandonment. It may mean tolerating the loneliness that comes when you stop being endlessly available. But in that space, new and healthier connections can grow. Jung would call this integration, bringing together the persona, the shadow, and the wounded child into a whole, conscious self. It is not about erasing your instinct to care. It is about caring from freedom rather than compulsion. When you save others because you choose to, not because you need to, it becomes love rather than survival. And here is the most powerful shift. You begin to realize that you were never meant to save the whole world. That weight was never yours to carry. You were meant to live, to experience, to create, to love, to grow. Saving everyone was the story your wound told you. Living fully is the story your healed self can finally embody. The journey won't be easy. You will feel guilt. You will feel resistance. The old shadow will whisper that you are being selfish. But remember, every time you choose yourself, you are breaking the cycle. Every time you comfort your own inner child, you are writing a new fate. You don't need to be the savior anymore. You just need to be whole. And that is more than enough. You became the savior you once needed. And for a time, that role kept you alive. It gave you a sense of purpose when the world around you felt empty. It made you useful, dependable, and strong. But now, it is time to face the deeper truth. You were never meant to live only for others. You were meant to live for yourself too. The child who learned to wipe away their own tears grew into the adult who wipes away everyone else's. But that child is still waiting for someone to finally notice, to finally say, you don't have to carry it all anymore. That someone is not coming from the outside. That someone is you. Carl Jung once said that the most terrifying thing is to accept yourself completely. And perhaps that is what you've been avoiding all along. Accepting that you are not just the strong one, you are also the vulnerable one. You are also the wounded one. You are also the one who longs to be held, to be cared for, to be loved without conditions. The mask of the Savior has hidden that truth for years. But masks grow heavy, and eventually they must be set down. This is your invitation. To stop abandoning yourself in the name of saving others. To step out from behind the persona and meet your shadow with compassion instead of fear. To recognize that your worth does not come from constant sacrifice, but from the simple, undeniable fact that you exist. You are enough even when you are not fixing, not rescuing, not carrying anyone else. So what does it mean to save yourself? It means giving yourself permission to rest without guilt. It means setting boundaries without apology. It means saying no, not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself too. It means seeking therapy or support, not as a sign of weakness, but as a declaration that you deserve healing as much as anyone you've ever helped. It means looking at that abandoned child inside of you and saying, I see you, I hear you. I will not leave you again. The world will not collapse if you stop holding it together. People will adjust. Some may even leave when you stop overgiving. And that's okay, because those relationships were built on your self-abandonment, not on love. But the right people, the ones who truly value you, will remain. And more importantly, you will remain whole, seen, alive. So take a moment now. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and ask yourself, am I living as a mask or as my true self? Am I saving others to avoid saving myself? These are not easy questions, but the fact that you are still here, listening, means you are ready to face them. You became the savior you once needed. That was your survival. But survival is not enough anymore. Now it is time to live, to step into your own wholeness, to rescue yourself from the fate of exhaustion and invisibility. Because the truth is this, the world doesn't just need your strength. It needs your authenticity. It needs the real you. And that begins the moment you stop living only for others and finally choose to save yourself. So let this be your call. Reflect, seek therapy if you need it. Do the inner work. Reclaim the parts of you that have been lost beneath the Savior's mask. Step into the fullness of who you are. You have saved so many. Now at last it is your turn. If this message spoke to you, don't let it end here. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to receive the next video, each one designed to awaken something deeper inside you. And I'd love to hear from you. What part of today's video resonated with you the most? What lesson, what insight struck you as if it were written just for you? Share it in the comments below, because your reflection might be exactly what someone else needs to read today.